Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a world where strength is measured by cursed energy, where survival belongs to the ruthless, and where power decides who lives and who is erased. Now imagine a man who steps into that world without claws, without monstrous rage, without hunger for dominance. A man who brings only one thing with him: justice. This is the rise of Judge Higuruma. In a world where cursed energy decides worth, where monsters are born from hatred and power belongs to those willing to abandon morality, Judge Higuruma enters like a contradiction walking on two legs. He does not arrive with inherited techniques or legendary bloodlines. He does not roar his presence onto the battlefield. Instead, he brings something far more unsettling to a society built on violence: order. The Jujutsu world is accustomed to chaos. Battles are up without warning, lives are lost in seconds, and strength alone determines survival. Against this backdrop, Higuruma feels almost out of place, like a man who wandered into the wrong genre of anime. And yet, that is exactly why his presence is so powerful. Before curses ever shaped his destiny, Higuruma lived in courtrooms, not battlegrounds. His battlefield was language, logic, and evidence. He believed deeply in the idea that truth could be uncovered through reason, that justice was not something you seized but something you upheld. In anime terms, he was not a warrior, he was a thinker. And thinkers rarely survive long in worlds ruled by brute force. But Higuruma did more than survive. He adapted without losing himself. The courtroom was his first domain, a place where words carried weight and decisions had consequences. To him, law was sacred. It was the thin line holding society together, the invisible structure preventing humanity from collapsing into savagery. Every case he handled reinforced that belief, even when the outcomes hurt. He trusted the system because he needed to believe in something larger than himself. This faith is what makes his fall, and rise, so impactful. As the world around him grew darker, the cracks in justice became impossible to ignore. Innocent people were crushed under the weight of technicalities. Criminals walked free because truth was inconvenient. The courtroom, once a place of clarity, became a theater of hypocrisy. And with every unjust verdict, something inside Higuruma fractured. Anime often portrays rage as explosive, but Higuruma's anger is silent. It simmers, it sharpens, it waits. When cursed energy finally awakens within him, it does not manifest as chaos. It manifests as a courtroom. This is the most chilling aspect of his character. In a universe where power usually reflects inner savagery or desire, Higuruma's domain reflects structure. Order. Procedure. His cursed technique doesn't overpower, it evaluates. It doesn't destroy, it judges. This alone makes him terrifying to sorcerers who rely on raw strength. Against Higuruma, power is irrelevant. Guilt is everything. The idea of a courtroom as a domain expansion is one of the most anime symbolic concepts imaginable. It represents a collision between civilization and savagery. When Higuruma activates his domain, the battlefield transforms into a place where violence pauses and accountability begins. No running, no overpowering, no escape through strength, only truth stands on trial. This flips the power fantasy on its head. The strongest fighter can fall just as easily as the weakest if they carry guilt. What makes this even more compelling is that Higuruma himself does not enjoy this power. He does not smile when judgment is passed. He does not revel in punishment. His expression remains heavy, burdened by responsibility. Unlike villains who enjoy domination or heroes who thrill in victory, Higuruma carries the emotional weight of every sentence he delivers. Each judgment reminds him of the system he once trusted, and the cost of its failure. In anime storytelling, characters often gain power through desire, the desire to protect, to conquer, to surpass limits. Higuruma gains power through disillusionment. His technique is born from the realization that justice, when corrupted, becomes indistinguishable from cruelty. This realization does not turn him evil, it turns him precise. He becomes a man who no longer believes justice will naturally prevail. It must be enforced. The most unsettling part of Higuruma's rise is how calm he remains in the face of monsters. Curses rage, scream, and slaughter. Sorcerers clash with explosive force. Higuruma simply stands, gavel in hand, as if saying, "Sit down. Your actions have consequences." That calm is not weakness. It is dominance of a different kind. In anime terms, he represents absolute authority, not because he demands it, but because the rules bend around him. His presence exposes an uncomfortable truth about the Jujutsu world: strength without morality is meaningless. Sorcerers fight curses to protect humanity, yet often abandon humanity in the process. Higuruma forces them to confront that contradiction. He doesn't ask if you're strong. He asks what you've done. And for many, that question is more terrifying than any curse. This is why his rise feels inevitable rather than flashy. He doesn't climb through battles alone, he rises because the world needs him. In a society drowning in blood, someone had to remind it what accountability looks like. Higuruma's power doesn't erase violence, it contextualizes it. It asks whether violence was justified, whether survival excuses cruelty, whether power absolves sin. In the anime narrative sense, Higuruma represents a rare archetype, justice incarnate without hero worship. He is not celebrated, he is not loved, he is necessary, and necessity is often feared. His courtroom does not care about intentions, only actions. This strips away the usual anime safety net where good intentions justify destruction. Under Higuruma's gaze, even heroes must answer for themselves. The Rise of Judge Higuruma is not about defeating enemies, it is about redefining the battlefield. He proves that in a world of curses, the most dangerous force is not hatred, but accountability. And as long as his courtroom exists, no one, curse or sorcerer, can claim innocence without being ready to prove it. The second phase of Judge Higuruma's journey is where his character shifts from disillusioned observer to active force, and this transition is one of the most compelling moral evolutions in Japanese anime storytelling. This is the moment when justice stops being an abstract belief and becomes a weapon, one that cuts without mercy, yet carries unbearable weight for the one who wields it. Higuruma does not awaken to cursed energy with excitement or ambition. He awakens to it with exhaustion. The exhaustion of a man who has seen truth buried too many times to remain silent any longer. Unlike typical sorcerers who discover their abilities through training or lineage, Higuruma's cursed technique emerges as a response to systemic failure. His power does not ask, "How strong are you?" It asks, "What have you done?" This alone makes him an anomaly in the Jujutsu world. While others sharpen their techniques to defeat enemies, Higuruma sharpens his judgment. His cursed energy manifests not as flames, blades, or beasts, but as procedure. Rules. Evidence. This reflects a deeply anime concept, power shaped by identity rather than desire. As Higuruma begins to actively engage with the cursed world, his sense of justice becomes both refined and distorted. He no longer believes that innocence will naturally prevail. He believes that wrongdoing must be exposed, even if the process destroys those involved. This is where his moral complexity intensifies. He is not blind to suffering, but he is no longer willing to let suffering excuse wrongdoing. In a world where survival often justifies brutality, Higuruma's stance feels almost cruel. And yet, it is precisely this cruelty that reveals how broken the world has become. His courtroom domain becomes more than a technique, it becomes a philosophy. When it activates, time seems to slow. Chaos halts. The usual anime rhythm of explosions and clashes is replaced by silence and tension. Characters are no longer judged by their power level, but by their past. This creates a unique kind of fear. Fighters who rely on instinct suddenly must rely on memory. Those who have justified violence as necessity are forced to confront the reality of their actions. What makes this phase especially tragic is Higuruma's growing isolation. As he becomes more active, he grows further removed from ordinary humanity. People do not cheer for a judge. They fear one. Allies feel uneasy around him because his presence implies accountability. In anime terms, Higuruma walks the path of the necessary antagonist, someone who may fight on the right side but will never be comfortable company. His justice does not comfort, it exposes. Internally, Higuruma is deeply conflicted. Every judgment he delivers reinforces the very truth that broke him in the first place, that justice always has a cost. He understands that punishment does not heal victims, and it does not erase pain. Yet he also understands that doing nothing allows pain to multiply. This paradox defines his emotional state. He is not chasing righteousness, he is preventing rot. This phase also highlights how different Higuruma is from traditional heroes. He does not save people with inspiring speeches or last-minute rescues. His victories are quiet, often grim. When someone is judged guilty, there is no triumph, only confirmation. The confirmation that the world is exactly as flawed as he believed. This makes every success feel like a loss, reinforcing his somber demeanor. From an anime perspective, this evolution challenges the audience. Viewers are used to rooting for characters who grow stronger to protect others. Higuruma grows stronger to hold others accountable. That distinction is uncomfortable, and that discomfort is intentional. It forces the question, is justice still justice if it hurts everyone involved? By the end of this keynote, Higuruma is no longer just a former lawyer turned sorcerer. He becomes a walking embodiment of consequence. His presence alone changes behavior. Curses and humans alike hesitate, not because they fear death, but because they fear exposure. And in a world where secrets often protect the powerful, Higuruma's greatest strength is not his cursed energy, it is his refusal to look away. This phase solidifies him as one of the most morally heavy characters in anime. He does not fight to win. He fights to reveal. In Revelation, once unleashed, cannot be undone. The third phase of Judge Higuruma's rise is where justice and humanity collide in the most painful way possible. By this point, Higuruma is no longer simply reacting to the corruption he sees around him, he is living inside it. Every battle, every verdict, every punishment forces him to confront a truth that no courtroom ever prepared him for. Justice, when enforced without mercy, can begin to resemble cruelty. This is the phase where Higuruma stops being just a judge of others and becomes a judge of himself. As Higuruma continues to wield his cursed technique, the emotional toll deepens. Each trial within his domain leaves a mark on him. Unlike other sorcerers who release stress through combat, Higuruma absorbs it. He remembers every crime, every confession, every moment where fear replaces denial in the eyes of the accused. These memories stack on top of each other, forming a psychological weight that threatens to crush him. In anime terms, this is the slow burn tragedy, the hero who grows heavier, not stronger, with each victory. This keynote explores Higuruma's growing awareness that justice is not absolute. His domain operates on rules, but real life rarely does. Circumstances blur guilt. Desperation distorts morality. Higuruma begins to recognize cases where the law can punish someone who is technically guilty, yet morally broken long before they ever committed a crime. This realization shakes the foundation of his belief system. He does not abandon justice, but he begins to question its rigidity. What makes this phase so compelling is that Higuruma does not externalize this conflict. He does not rant or rage. His struggle is quiet, internal, and deeply human. His silence becomes heavier than any speech. In battle, there are moments where he hesitates, not because he doubts his power, but because he doubts the outcome. Is punishment always the correct answer? Or is it simply the easiest one? His encounters during this phase often mirror his inner conflict. He faces opponents who commit evil not out of malice, but out of survival, fear, or manipulation. These confrontations force Higuruma to confront the uncomfortable truth that justice alone cannot fix systemic suffering. Punishing individuals does not dismantle the structures that create them. This realization does not weaken him, it complicates him. From an anime storytelling perspective, this phase elevates Higuruma beyond archetype. He is no longer the judge character. He becomes a philosophical battleground. Viewers are not meant to fully agree with him or oppose him. Instead, they are meant to feel the weight of every decision alongside him. His cursed technique remains powerful, but its use feels heavier each time, as though the universe itself is asking him to slow down. Emotionally, this is where empathy resurfaces. Higuruma begins to see himself in the accused, not because he has committed the same crimes, but because he understands the pressure of being trapped by a system that offers no escape. This empathy does not stop him from delivering judgment, but it changes how he carries it. There is no satisfaction in guilt, only resolve. His strength in this phase lies in restraint. He does not rush to activate his domain. He listens, he observes, he allows the truth to surface naturally, even when it hurts. This restraint makes him more dangerous than before. Enemies cannot predict him, because his actions are guided by conscience, not impulse. By the end of this keynote, Judge Higuruma stands at a fragile balance point. He has not abandoned justice, nor has he surrendered to despair. Instead, he exists in the uncomfortable space between law and humanity. And in Japanese anime tradition, that space is where the most powerful characters are forged, not through certainty, but through doubt. This phase proves that Higuruma's greatest battle is not against curses or criminals, but against the fear that justice, if left unquestioned, can become another form of injustice. The final phase of Judge Higuruma's rise is not about gaining more power, it is about redefining what justice means in a world ruled by curses. By this point, Higuruma has walked through guilt, doubt, anger, and restraint. What remains is not certainty, but clarity. He no longer believes that justice is perfect or pure. Instead, he understands that justice is a responsibility that must be carried, even when it is flawed. This realization transforms him from a man wielding judgment into a symbol of accountability. In this stage, Higuruma's strength becomes internal rather than technical. His curse technique remains formidable, but it is no longer the center of his identity. What defines him now is choice. Every verdict he delivers is intentional. He understands that judgment is not just about declaring guilt, it is about accepting the consequences of that declaration. This maturity separates him from both sorcerers and traditional judges. He does not hide behind rules. He stands behind his decisions. One of the most powerful elements of this keynote is Higuruma's acceptance of imperfection. He no longer seeks an untainted version of justice that punishes all evil and protects all innocence. He recognizes that such a system does not exist. Instead, he chooses to act where he can make a difference, even if that difference is small. In anime terms, this is the evolution from idealism to resolve, a far more dangerous and enduring form of strength. Higuruma's presence in battle during this phase is calm, controlled, and almost solemn. He does not fight with anger or desperation. He fights with intent. His movements reflect deliberation rather than urgency. Opponents feel the weight of being seen, not just as enemies, but as individuals whose choices led them here. This psychological pressure becomes just as overwhelming as any physical attack. Another key aspect of this phase is Higuruma's relationship with the Jujutsu world itself. He no longer views it as something he must obey or reject entirely. Instead, he exists alongside it, challenging it through action rather than rebellion. He does not preach reform. He embodies it. Every fair judgment, every restrained execution of power, becomes a quiet indictment of a system that often prioritizes strength over ethics. This keynote also highlights Higuruma's solitude. Unlike characters who find comfort in companionship, Higuruma accepts that his path is largely walked alone. Not because he is incapable of connection, but because his role demands emotional independence. He cannot afford to be swayed by loyalty or hatred. His isolation is not punishment, it is discipline. In Japanese anime storytelling, this kind of solitude often marks a character who has transcended personal desire. Emotionally, Higuruma reaches a state of somber peace. He still feels guilt. He still questions himself. But these feelings no longer paralyze him. They inform him. His empathy and his judgment coexist without canceling each other out. This balance allows him to move forward without losing himself, a rare achievement in a world built on extremes. By the end of this phase, Judge Higuruma is no longer defined by the law, his curse technique, or his past failures. He is defined by his willingness to stand in the gray and act anyway. He proves that justice does not need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes, the most meaningful judgment is delivered not with fury, but with unwavering resolve. In a world where sorcery often overrides morality, Higuruma becomes something far more unsettling than a powerful fighter. He becomes a reminder that justice, even when broken, must still be chosen.